You're listening to the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show with your host, Coach Tim Campsall, where we talk with successful business owners to hear the stories of their journeys in building their successful businesses. And more importantly, we recognize the folks who help them excel because we know that achieving business success is not something we can do on our own.
Hello, everyone. This is Coach Tim Campsall, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. My guest is one of the most introverted people for being in the role that he is in that requires him to be an extrovert. So we'll learn a little bit more about that here in a minute. In his downtime, he enjoys staying active with things like hiking and walking and jogging, and is a vegetable garden connoisseur. So I have a vegetable garden too, so I want to learn about that, Tom. He is most proud of his team and the things that his team and the business have been able to accomplish in terms of projects that have created sustainable impacts across the nation. It's my pleasure to welcome Tom to the show today. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Tim. Nice to be here. Look forward to the discussion.
Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your personal story, like where you were born and live and about your family.
Well, born and bred here in Indiana, lifelong Hoosier, as they call it, and been very blessed to have a blended family, 3 children of my own, and my wife, Marcianne, has 3 of her own, and we now have I think 13 grandchildren between the whole group. So it's quite an extended family, and but it's most of them are not too far away, so we're able to keep in touch.
Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations on all the grandbabies. That's cool. So, hey, tell me a little bit more about vegetable garden. I have a vegetable garden too, so I love chatting with people who have one. What got you into that?
Well, as you know, we have a lot of flat ground here in Indiana. So I long ago I learned gardening from my father, and I've kind of kept at it. I've had to cut back here and there a little bit through the years, but I guess I consider myself, I plant all kinds of things: broccoli, tomatoes, green beans, and all that. But heirloom tomatoes might be my specialty, so to speak.
Fantastic. And how long have you been doing that?
Oh gosh, I don't know, 20 some odd years. I've lost track. As I said, I've cut back. I'm now in garden beds, and so I've reduced, and that's caused me to be a little more efficient and productive, let's say.
Indeed. Isn't it interesting with vegetable garden that we can seemingly do the exact same thing every year, but something, at least I've found, something always goes wrong. Something always just doesn't seem to do as well as it did the year before.
I know, just when you think you have it perfected, then you get a bad broccoli crop, and even same thing. So weather obviously impacts it, and I suppose fertilizer and bugs and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So
Tom, is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Well, golly, there's a lot. I guess one story that just pops to mind: my first wife, that had my 3 children, unfortunately passed away quite a number of years ago from breast cancer. And my kids, I'm not sure I'm proud of this comment, but they like to tell stories of being stranded at various practices or school events that they were attending, and those were pre smartphone days when you couldn't just pick up your smartphone. So it all sounds funny now, but I'm not exactly proud that I was late to pick them up at various points in time and that type of thing.
Oh, so it was just late. It wasn't that Dad forgot.
Yeah, I didn't forget completely, but I was building my business, and I was always, just 10, 15 minutes late. A meeting got started late. A meeting went too long. You know how it is in business.
Indeed. Well, thank you for sharing. Hey, Tom, tell us about how the business came to be, and at what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
Well, I in the '80s I worked for a great governor in Indiana and was a had spent a number of years in state government, and I ran what was called Department of Workforce Development, which was an attempt by the governor at the time to integrate and coordinate education workforce activities with economic development. Things like elections come along, and the my side lost, and I found out that people don't return phone calls when you're on the losing side of election. But I loved what I did, working in economic development workforce. So I just thought, well, I'll do some consulting for a while, and then I'll find a real job. And I am, just so your listeners know, I'm still looking for that real job. 30, 35 years later, but I've been really fortunate, blessed to be able to work in an area, education, workforce, and economic development, and actually arguably make a living out of it.
Fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit more about the company. What's the name and what do you guys do? How do you help folks?
Well, it used to be Thomas P. Miller and Associates, very poor name, but all I had at the time when I went out on my own was my names, and it was just me back in 1989. And so it's we rebranded recently, and it's TPMA, and which actually was an easy rebrand because everybody had long since forgotten my name and called it, TPMA. So that was easy to get through, and we've grown beyond our roots in Indiana, thankfully, and do work all over the country for states and communities in education, workforce, and economic development.
Fantastic. So for folks who may not know what that means, just give us a little bit more flavor. Like what does the business do? How do you help folks?
Well, so states and communities and counties and cities and all kinds of people are constantly trying to figure out what are the new skills and educational credentials needed in the ever evolving economy. So we work both sides of the street, so to speak. We work with education providers, community colleges, schools, and community development, economic development groups to try to match skills and credentials with the needs of the work, with the needs that employers have.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Tom, share a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, even though maybe you didn't think that you could, and the impact that that person had.
Well, I suppose I have to go back to the Governor Bob Orr, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago, and his Lieutenant Governor John Mutz, who is still living here in Indianapolis, and they were both great mentors and gave me a lot of tips from their own private sector businesses that they were involved in prior to becoming elected officials. And so there, I gained a lot of confidence. I tried to listen a lot to them while I was working for them, and I attributed a lot of my being able to stay in this field for so long to things I learned from them.
Fantastic. What's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
That's a great question. I guess maybe to boil it down to a simple answer, I learned to listen a lot. People that join the firm and people much younger than I am, talk about, well, how do you sell and what do you sell and how should I sell? And I usually just respond by saying, listen. Don't sell anything. Listen to what people's needs are, problems they're having, opportunities that they see. So I think listening was something I learned early on.
That's great feedback. One of the things that we teach in our sales training is exactly that. Ask good questions and then listen. Shut up and listen to what the
Right.
prospect is saying, and really understand, right? And ask probing questions and deeper questions, and really getting, because to your point, right? It's not about selling. It's about figuring out if there's a match between what we have to offer and what the person needs, and you only discover that by asking lots of questions and really understanding. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
No, that's, I think, Tim, what attracted me when you reached out and wanted to have a discussion is I actually did a little bit of homework and did review some of the basic tenets that you try to provide your clientele. And I think you're spot on with that approach.
Well, thank you. Hey, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So tell us what's one of your biggest challenges that you've had over the years, and maybe a fellow business owner or a colleague that came alongside you and helped you through that.
Um, so we're a consulting business, and if you're in a consulting business, the textbook would tell you that you need to come up with a template and sell it, same template, to 500 different people or 5,000 different people or whatever. That didn't sound very appealing to me. So I really wanted to have a lot of variety in my career and be able to work on a variety of different things, kind of intellectual stimulation, if you will.
Mhm.
So I really tried to listen to the model, but I didn't want to be a slave to the model. So we've constantly been a firm that's had a lot of curiosity, and we get into things like one of the hot things we're into right now is childcare.
Mm.
Childcare, and you and your viewers, well, why would you get into childcare? I thought you were an economic development education workforce. You cannot work in education workforce these days unless you are providing and have options on how people are going to get childcare.
Oh,
And
right, yeah.
oh, by the way, it's not, when they say childcare, there's a hidden code, and what they also mean is early learning.
Mm.
It's not just like in my era. I'm going to tell on my age here. Drop your kid off and hope they had 3 or 4 balls that they could kick around.
Yeah, right.
It's really more about, yes, people want good care, but they also want their child to be learning, and
Mhm.
whether it's a variety of skills, playing in teams, working, all that kind of stuff. So we've always been a firm that's intellectually curious and get into a lot of things that aren't readily apparent on the surface.
Mhm. Yeah. It's interesting. You said, most people wouldn't think about it, but it is a huge bottleneck if, folks, if not being able to find childcare is preventing somebody from entering the workforce and holding back the economy because there's not enough people that are willing or able to come to work.
Well, you're exactly right. And it's always been a need, as many of your listeners and you yourself know, Tim. COVID accelerated and exaggerated a lot of things in society, one of which is childcare. I mean, people couldn't go to work 3 or 4 years ago. We were all doing Zoom and Teams calls and everything else. But the kids were here too, doing Zoom calls and team calls with
Yes, yes.
schools. And everybody was saving a lot of money, And so, okay, fast forward, here we are today. We're, mostly beyond the immediate impacts of COVID, but we're still seeing lingering impacts that are still playing out.
Yeah. And you mentioned, everybody's saving a lot of money. It's hard to go back, right? And
Yeah.
and have to take on those old costs again.
Yes, you're exactly right. I mean, and people are like, well, gosh, I performed at my workplace pretty well. I kept the kids. We didn't have to pay. I think I like this world.
Yeah, right. Indeed. Hey, Tom, if I'm going to put you on the spot here. If I was to ask you to pick 3 people in your business owner journey that you're most grateful for them being there to help with your growth, who are those 3 people and how they help you?
Well, I'll go in reverse order. One person that I've met several years ago, and actually, this has been widely publicized, but helped uncover some embezzlement at my firm about 5 years ago, was a guy that has become my successor. And his name is Mark Grommelsbacher. Successful businessman in his own right. He eventually got into some work in Indiana around entrepreneurism. And so anyway, he's been helpful and very instrumental late in my business about how you optimize a business and
Mm.
sell a business maybe and all that type of thing. Um, Early on, uh, that's so I'm thinking I got to go peel back the memory files here and go back. There was a gentleman at Good Goodwill Industries in Indiana that I actually still do a Bible study with. His name is Byron Jensen, and he's retired now and so forth. But he was very instrumental in a lot of ways in helping me understand the needs of nonprofit organizations. He was a vice president there, and the CEO Jim McClellan at the time. Both were helpful to me. Just understand more deeply needs of nonprofit, how they can grow. Because the one in Indiana was a particularly successful, actually worldwide model. As so, those are two individuals that popped to mind immediately.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and think into the future. So as you think about the next, 1 to 3 years, Tom, what's the number one point of growth or development or challenge that you see in terms of achieving your goals?
Well, I'm going through an interesting transition that I never really probably planned as well for as I could have. I'm 72, so I'm at a point where I'm trying to develop a successor,
Mm-hmm.
name a successor, leave the firm in good hands, and all that. We're just finishing our best year ever.
Oh,
Uh,
congratulations.
Thank you. In 2023, and it's not of my making. It's the team we built, and a lot of different things. That's not to say we didn't make mistakes last year and in other years, but
Sure.
um, I find myself at an interesting point that I really I don't know that anybody knows how to prepare for, and that is how do you transition a firm and myself. So that's a daily learning experience for me now, and I would urge younger viewers to not kick that can down the road and just put in place a good successor strategy.
Yeah, well, the great advice. A lot of folks aren't really thinking that far ahead, right? It's more about, how do I keep building the business and make it successful and right and tackle, the next year or two. But it's critical, as you just mentioned, to begin with the end in mind, right? Of
Yeah,
let's clearly identify what's my goal of what year is the business done and what does the business look
yeah,
like, and what am I planning to sell it? Am I planning to pass it down to the next generation? Because if we don't have that clarity, then right, it like you just mentioned, we get closer to that date and it's like, oh, I need to start thinking about this.
yeah. Hey, Tim, I know you're supposed to be asking all the questions. I got to mention this. You asked me about who had impacted my life and mentors, and I started with the most recent. And obviously, I was struggling a little bit to go back 35 years ago. There was a elderly bank president who, when I was thinking about starting my own business, counseled me. And here's the sentence that he used. He said, "If you're thinking about starting your own business, don't buy a job, create a business."
Yes.
And it's stuck with me for many years because it's easy when you go into business to try to you want to create wealth and earnings and things, which obviously we all need on a month-to-month basis. But don't try to do it all yourself. Try to
Yes.
try to build a business, not just keep yourself busy for 10
Yeah.
hours a day.
Yeah. What great advice. Um, the buying a job idea, right? Usually everybody who initially, goes from an employee to a business owner buys themselves a job. But the problem with that, and you just alluded to it, is, hey, if something, God forbid, if something happens to us and we're the only reason our business works and we have to be in the hospital for 3 months, right, our livelihood is ruined. Right?
Yeah,
The other thing of buying a job is if we have to show up every day. So, right, we're just trading our time for money. and we're stuck, right? We can't take vacations. We can't, you mentioned earlier, right? The challenges of, having to pick up the kids and right. And having a meeting that goes late. So yeah, if we just have a job, we're always on. So I love that advice. What an amazing piece of wisdom so early on as you were, launching into your business career. Hey, last question, Tom. Jim Rohn, an amazing business guru. One of the things he said was, we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So as you think about that quote, what advice would you have for business owners who are trying to do it on their own?
That's I had never heard that quote. Thank you for sharing that, Tim. That's very, very insightful. Um, it brings to mind a couple different things that I try to do. One, I guess, is a rule. I don't know that I'm a good rule follower in life at all, much less business life. But um, one thing I have tried to keep in my mind is hire above myself.
Mm,
Hire people that are smarter than me, know more than me, can analyze things better, whatever. Just don't be afraid to hire above yourself. Don't hire down. So I think that's part of what the gentleman you mentioned was trying to get to. And one other thing that I guess some observation that I stumbled into somehow about 15 years ago, when I am meeting with a prospect or somebody that might be interested in our services and so forth, as the owner of the firm, and we used to have 5 people, then we had 15 people, and now, we've got 55 or whatever the number is today. I didn't want stuck. I may have hit it off with the prospect, but I didn't want to get stuck doing the work,
yeah.
Because maybe I wasn't even the right person. I wasn't good enough analyst or whatever. So I got into a mode where, as I was listening to people describe their problem or opportunity, I would suggest ways we might be able to help them, but I would also suggest people in the firm that would be very helpful to them to solve the problem or identify the opportunity, whatever it was. So it was not only listening to what their needs were, but it was also beginning to build a relationship between me and Joe or Sue, whoever in the firm could actually help them.
What a great way to make that transition from, you're not buying me, right? You're buying my company, and I have an expert that within the firm who's going to be able to take care of you.
Right.
Gets you out of the pigeonhole of an expectation that they're going to be working with you.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, and I don't know that I was perfect every time in how I handled it, but
Sure. The other thing that you mentioned is, hire people who are better than you. That's an amazing attitude, because a lot of business owners, right, have a little bit of an ego. That's what's allowed them to step out and and become a business owner. So I'd love to hear just a little bit more about, how did you get to that humble place of knowing that, right, it made sense to hire smarter people in different areas of the business?
Well, that's a good question. I guess one reason I got to that point, and this goes back to when I was working for the governor that I've already mentioned, and at a very young age, I was asked to lead this large bureaucratic government bureaucracy of 2,000 people, and I very much in those days in the 80s, quality circles, those types of initiatives were hot topics. How do you engage and empower employees and all that kind of stuff? And so I was a big believer. I drank the Kool-Aid, and so I felt like, well, if I'm going to be able to pull this off, I've got to have exceptionally bright and engaged and smart people, or this is just going to be a classic bureaucracy. So so I think I've always been a big believer about employee engagement, employee empowerment, that kind of stuff. And so that's how I got to the hiring smarter than me kind of thing. And because I'm not a smart person, that creates a wide pool.
Oh, that's awesome. Another thing that I hear from folks when when we talk about that quote of, we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, is folks tend to be, timid or afraid of reaching out to other business owners to have a coffee meeting with them because they're afraid that the person's going to be too busy or they're going to say no. What's been your experience with that, or what advice would you have for folks who, are afraid of being told no and not reach out to other business owners?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think I'm not the most. I appear to be extroverted, but I'm, and it was part of the question that you asked me to kind of prep me for this meeting. I appear to be very extroverted, but I'm really not. I mean, I, really probably prefer to be out there working in my garden beds, But anyway, on a serious thing, I think you have to push yourself. I've had to push myself a little bit and get myself into a little bit of a discomfort zone, and trust my instincts, but also push myself a little bit. And I've reached out to other business owners for coffee or a beer or whatever, and gotten advice and compare notes. So, don't be afraid to reach out laterally and see what's working for somebody else. I mean, one of my things that I tell people when I'm interviewing, I don't interview everybody anymore. And every now and then I get involved in an interview, is at TPMA, you have a chance to create your own career pathway. You don't have to wait for the person that you report to leave or die or whatever.
Right.
You can, you can become a leader in your own right by figuring out new things that we could be doing that relate to our core education, workforce, economic development. What are the branches off of that are really important?
Yeah, fantastic. It sounds like, Tom, that you've been blessed with some incredible people in your business owner journey that have helped you along the way. If they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
Well, first I would say thank you so much for all you did to help during your time at TPMA. And I would, in as genuine and sincere way as I would, I'd just deliver that simple message. I would also, and they would not be surprised, they would chuckle, would probably probe, see if they wanted to come back. And see if they had some more gas in the tank, so to speak, to go with it. And actually, we chuckle at that. I've actually had several in the last year that have done that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I know turnover, the textbooks say turnover is horrible. You got to prevent it at all costs and all that. Well, turnover is like cholesterol. There's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol.
Right. Yes.
And I've actually encouraged, and I tell people when I'm recruiting them, I say, look, we're a small firm, but you're going to have a chance to work with governors and mayors and leaders, of various kind. And the risk I'm running is that I want to deliver exceptionally high quality products and services to them, but they may hire you away from me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. I mean, I want your time here to be extremely valuable, and I've actually lost people. Housing director of Indiana and all these people used to work for me. They actually become some of our best clients.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, I love that. That's a for sure an abundance mentality, right? Of we're gonna invest in you and grow you, and you might leave because you're awesome. Versus the scarcity mentality would be, right. We've got to protect and somehow keep everybody that we hire with us. So I love that philosophy of, yeah, we're investing in you to help you have a better future, and if that means leaving, that's okay.
Yep.
Tom, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, it's been great, Tim. Thank you for inviting me. And it's great to interact with you.
Thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show. Please help spread this movement by liking and subscribing to our show and following us on Facebook and LinkedIn. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Please pay it forward and be sure to tune in next time to the Self-Made is a Myth podcast.